Hey, it's me, back from the dead for those who only follow me on YouTube, and for those who follow me on other platforms, just another day. I have had a hell of a busy time these past couple of months between changing jobs and moving, so production on videos has slowed down substantially, on top of just other things in life. Mostly good. I will say that most of the things that have been getting my attention have been good things. They have not been negative things. They have not been things that I wish weren't happening. They've all been things that I, aside from maybe like one event in my life, I'm very, very happy about. So some news on videos before I go into the speedrun proper is that I have started the process again of working on the Sasuke and Kasuga video. I found some more sources. I want to really try to start doing a more extensive deep dive with these histories. Before this, I've been doing research, but I had this sort of mentality of I want a 2-week schedule, 2-week timeline, deadline. Words are hard when you're just speaking off the top of your head, but I wanted a 2-week deadline for my videos, just because, and I think this is something that is the illusion to maybe people who don't make videos. You get the sense that, wow, how do some of these people put out videos so much? And yeah, obviously most of the time it's because they have people who help them. But I want to start incorporating more thorough research. I want to start putting more academic research in. I did go to school for Asian studies, so I should probably get some use out of that master's degree. But it started back up. I found some cool articles that I want to read in some academic journals that are very interesting, specifically as it pertains to Sasuke's influence on the early years of certain entertainment companies in Japan, specifically like anime companies like Toei. It's very interesting, and I want to talk about it either in the video or for the other update. I have a setup now where I can probably start streaming again. Streaming has always been something that's pretty hit or miss for me, mostly because for the past 3 years it's been hard for me to kind of have a private space, but now that I do have a area of my own that I can do these in, I've thought about returning to streaming, probably just on Twitch. Might do the Twitch YouTube simultaneous stream. Almost fumbled my words again. So yeah, I'm working on what exactly I want to do, what my plans for streaming would be, and getting it set up. But overall, the main message of this update, it's a very roundabout update that now that I look at the timer is 4 minutes of me rambling, is that I will be able to start producing videos again. I'm not going to worry about a 2-week deadline. I also don't want to take months and months and months to release videos and content. More so because I just like talking about this kind of stuff, and I like the things that I find out when I research, and researching is really fun, and it's hard for me to do if I don't have an explicit endpoint that I'm trying to reach. So for me and my enjoyment, releasing these videos is a way for me to just be motivated to learn more about stuff that already interests me. And so, you know, I do want like a deadline. Hopefully I can release at least a video a month. I know that is probably wishful thinking with how chaotic my life has been the past almost 4 years at this point, but you know, I gotta have wishful thinking if I want things to be different. Alright, anyways, that's 5.5 minutes, so let's get on to the speedrun. So yes, this is the New Game Plus speedrun of Sanada Yukimura-den. I hope you enjoy it. I look forward to talking about the things I did and the future of not just this speedrun, but also Sumeragi, because I have discovered both new strats that I can implement and then reapplying old strats from like bygone eras of Sumeragi glitches. So I'm very happy about that. I could probably beat my other record by a substantial amount now when I eventually do that, which maybe that's what I'll do on stream at first. But if you enjoy, as always, you know, like, comment, and subscribe. Sorry that I didn't say that at the start or at the end. I know that can be a pet peeve for some people to kind of just have it in the middle, but yeah. So I hope that you enjoy. Alright, so the first thing you might notice when it comes to the splits in the timer is that I do have in parentheses no chapter 4 or 6. This is because from a New Game Plus perspective, when you're just focusing on beating the levels, nothing actually changes for those levels because they're on timers. And I figured it wouldn't be very fun or interesting. This is a very casual category anyways, where I'm the only person who's doing it. If this were to become more competitive, either the rule I would say is just to worry about chapter 4 or 6, or, you know, do them. If you want to know what my time would have been had I done those levels, just add ooh, a hell of a voice crack there. Just add 25 minutes to the end time here, and you'll get what my run would have been with those two stages. Alright, got a lot to talk about with this run. So, I'm using Mitsunari at the start. I have his personal style attached. I used 5 characters through this run. 4 of them use their personal style. Personal styles are very... So personal items and personal accessories and personal personal skills are inscriptions. That's the word I'm looking for. God, you can tell I'm recording this late at night off the cuff. Always very hit or miss with a lot of people. When they talk about Sengoku Basara, the preference of do personal inscriptions help characters? Do they make them worse? Do they make them, you know, do they take away certain things? And for the most part, in Sengoku Basara 2 and 4, you can customize your characters around the personal inscriptions. But in 3 Vanilla and Yukimura-den, you kind of just have to commit to what the game gives you. So the benefits of Mitsunari is I get this max reverence from the start, which is going to be the best way to do a speed boost for him. And then personal styles in Yukimura-den fall into 3 Bushin camps. So either your character gets a buff to attack, a speed boost, or they get an emphasis on healing. Mitsunari gets an attack boost, so since his Bushin's at level 4 and his health is at max, he'll deal additional damage. And as you can see, it is quite a lot of damage. Another great thing is starting up his R1 skill during the boss animation will immediately hit them out of it. You can see just how fast New Game Plus is when you have the right setups maxed out to the right levels. I didn't even get to talk about like a lot of the things in that level because of just explaining the mechanics of how personal styles work in Sengoku Basara and then how they work specifically in Yukimura-den. So I can talk a little bit more about Mitsunari in this level and why he's chosen for the first 2 levels of this run. So on top of the Bushin boosts, every personal style has a unique effect for their designated character. So for Mitsunari, he immediately goes into the max level of reverence when he uses it, which is what allows him to Naruto run like this. Normally you have to get a lot of kills to go into this state, but with his unique skill you can just go right into it. Additionally, all of his skills have the precise timing on them. So normally, for instance, to get that specific version of his R1 skill, you have to press the R1 button at precise times in his combo string. But by having this unique skill, I'm able to just go right into it. And the benefit of this is that it draws enemies in and it deals a lot of damage. So Mitsunari has a very easy time dealing with large crowds of enemies, particularly in 4 and Yukimura-den because of the way those games' engines work specifically. That being said, Mitsunari is very, very outclassed by the balancing of Yukimura-den's story mode, which I learned a lot about through New Game Plus speedruns. In particular, the final fights, even with maxed out like gear, still take quite a bit of time compared to a lot of other fights. So what I really like about the New Game Plus route is it's a lot like the New Game route, where I'm using a lot of different characters. New Game, you're forced to use 6 characters. In New Game Plus, the routing I ended up using 5 characters. So it was almost the same amount. And Yukimura-den is very interesting because casually, it is not balanced at all. But because of the way stats work in the game and how they're tied to styles, and how you can't really customize those styles, means that there is no one character who dominates every single situation. I know the meme is always Kenshin from Utage onward is really busted, but honestly, he's really only good in this game mostly for Sanada trials. Otherwise, you have to mix and match a lot of characters for certain stages to really optimize them the best. So Mitsunari is the case in these first couple of stages because the damage he does with this R1 skill plus these stages' necessity to deal with large crowds of enemies make him very powerful. So what I do for this upcoming boss fight is I go right into his Basara skill because A, with the attack boost from boosting level 4, I easily deal with Mitsuhide's first bar of health, and since I'm in this Basara animation, it also skips his boss animation. And I can just use R1 skills again to completely deal insane amounts of damage. If you hold down the R1 skill when it's correctly timed, Mitsunari will do this follow-up move where he gets closer to the opponent, and this is useful for looping bosses. As I mentioned, the R1 skill, when you use it during boss transition animations, stays active. So for Nobunaga, I can just hit him out of his demon state right away because I deal enough hits and damage. So this fight is a cakewalk. But that's the end of Mitsunari in this run. He's really only best in these first 2 stages. He might be decent in the 3rd stage, but overall the character I found to be the best when I get to it at least as of now, is, thankfully for me, Magoichi. I got to use her in a speedrun, yay! So Magoichi has the same Bushin setup as Mitsunari does with her unique skills and her unique style. So she'll get an attack boost at level 4, so I do want to get up to that level. The main reason Magoichi is good for this stage is because of the fact that she has ranged attacks and the fact that her rockets deal a really substantial amount of damage even if your Bushin isn't level 4. It's not enough to deal with bosses quickly, but it is enough to deal with just random enemies really easily. So for the most part, most of these flag bearers don't take a long time to defeat, but this game does have critical hits, so sometimes if critical hits aren't popping, they do take some time. But also because she shoots rockets with her unique style, she can deal with crowds of enemies pretty easily, which means I can get Bushin rather quickly in both this section and the upcoming section. One of the things I've learned a lot from this speedrun is the parts of the levels that I had overlooked in New Game. So, for instance, there are certain containers in the stages or certain enemies that have this, they're carrying this Bushin box, and it gives you extra Bushin than you would normally get from enemies. And so because of that, I've been learning a lot of things to even optimize New Game again to make that a little bit faster than I thought it would be. Because I already thought it was good enough, but apparently there's more I can do. So this section is the main reason I use Magoichi. Kind of as I mentioned in New Game with Masayuki, it's mostly because of the last hit that this ninja needs, and I don't want to get trapped in the force field, and having a ranged attack helps to prevent that. Luckily for me, this ninja went to all the places he's supposed to go to. I think this section is supposed to have fixed spots when you hit him. It never feels like it does, but when I was practicing this speedrun, he always went to the same spots every time. I don't know if it depends on the character you play as or other RNG factors, but thankfully I lucked out. The only part of this stage that Magoichi struggles with in any meaningful way is the Kotaro fight. Mostly her Basara skill doesn't have the best range, and she doesn't move a lot during it. So this would be the one section Mitsunari might be pretty good for, because even though his Basara attack is a bit shorter in length, in terms of the actual movement he has, he covers a lot more ground. But I'm still able to easily dispatch of the Kotaros, and I want to get my Basara gauge filled up before facing Ujimasa to do very similar things I did with Yukimura to skip the second phase. Only Magoichi's rocket launcher ultimate is really good, and you can use it and prep it, for the transition right here. So I don't have to use the Basara attack right now, and can just stop it here. I did mess up at this point. I should have waited to pop the Basara skill, because most of it was just spent as he was transitioning to his third phase. But it's a very minor mistake, and it only costs a couple seconds. So that is stage or chapter 3. Unfortunately, this is the only time I use Magoichi, because she gets outclassed by the remaining characters. So Yukimura-den, its story mode, you fight exclusively men or characters and enemies that the game codes as being men. So someone who's actually very useful because of this is Naotora, because of her personal style effect of dealing extra damage against men. You'll see just how good it is. in this chapter. I don't use her for the rest of... So I use her for 2 chapters. So it's not like she's used for the rest of the run going forward. But again, very particular moments to pull out characters and their strengths. Natora's biggest weakness, something I've actually learned a lot with Yukimura-den speedruns. Despite Sengoku Basara being a crowd combat game, most of the cast cannot quickly dispatch of large crowds of enemies. Like, they can deal with crowds of enemies, but when you look at how quickly, like, Mitsunari can take care of enemies, or how quickly Masamune White Cross can, and then if you played as, like Natora here, where the range isn't the best in most of her attacks, you know, she can't deal with it well. But as you saw right there, this ultimate skill absolutely shreds bosses. All it takes is one hit from it, and they are defeated. The biggest drawback, which you'll see when I get to Hideyoshi and Mitsunari, is that the skill is only good against enemies that are normal weight. So Hideyoshi, for instance, is a heavy character, and part of what makes this skill so good is the way it juggles the opponent. So if you have an opponent who's heavy, who can't be launched by it, it won't work very well. So I popped telepathy mode there because this fight has a tendency to just stagger you before you can attack, but thankfully I'm able to do some pretty basic stuff, use the ultimate to deal with the first form, and then pop a well-timed Basara to deal with the second form. You might have seen another weakness of Natora there. Her Basara attack, as far as I know, has the shortest range. So if you're not right next to the enemy when you pop it, it will miss. Thankfully, in this level, Natora does not need to deal with a very large crowd of enemies. The most she has to defeat is 15 enemies, while it is the cavalry. The room that she fights them in is relatively small, so it's not as though they have an easy time getting out of reach of her. That being said, I still do, miss some time here because of where they spawn in, but it's easy to just rush them down. One of the things about New Game Plus Yukimura-den runs compared to New Game, or even the little bit of the Platinum run that I was kind of routing that I'll have to get back into so I can do it, is that you're so overpowered and there's so many things that apply through multiple stages that sometimes it's kind of just like, yeah, alright, I said everything that I need to say here. But again, right here, popping the telepathy so that I don't get staggered, hitting Kojiro, and I'm looking to be at max health because, like Magoichi Mitsunari, Natora has an attack-focused Bushin, and I want to pick up this telepathy. The main reason I want telepathy is for Mitsunari, because Mitsunari can be defeated with that ultimate, so I want to make sure I don't get staggered by him. With Hideyoshi, I just have to keep looping specific attacks. So the biggest issue with this strat, which you'll see in the second Natora level, is that if she is hit during the startup of her ultimate, she does stagger out of it. So if I'm in situations where either there isn't enough telepathy to deal with a boss, or it runs out, I am kind of screwed. So thankfully here, because I want to time Hideyoshi's defeat so that I'm not too far away from him, so that when I use the Basara skill I can hit him, but thankfully he tries to grab me, so he doesn't really move very far. I'm still able to get him in the Basara skill, even though he dodged out of it at one point. I remember when I did this, I was just like, oh, you gotta be kidding me. Don't tell me that I have to find some other way to beat you. But thankfully I was able to beat him relatively quickly. Now then, I've been saying relatively a lot. Anyways, now then, the actual surprise MVP for this speedrun for me is Yoshihiro Shimazu. So, Yoshihiro has an insta-kill attack, as does Masamune and as does Kojiro, but Yoshihiro's special skill, his unique style, makes all of his ultimates start up faster. So, I can do something like this. So this does require a specific setup. You want to have his blade extension ultimate on, because the boss will be just out of reach, that if you don't have it on, they'll be able to dodge out of the way of that ultimate. So I need to constantly make sure it's on. You'll see at both in this level and the next level, which I also use Yoshihiro in, that because I'm swapping between two ultimates, I sometimes don't keep track of which one I'm on, which means that sometimes I lose a little bit of time when I'm meaning to do that, and instead I'm just applying the blade extension again. So the funny thing is, in like Sumeragi, that attack isn't the most useful because there's a lot of ways you can deal with bosses in Sumeragi, and there's a lot of setups you can get that will just shred through their health. But because of the way Yukimura-den has like more conventional boss fights, it is way too overpowered. The only downside is that Yoshihiro, I'm pretty sure, is the second slowest character in the series, behind like ahead of like only Kanbei. So his Bushin actually gives him a speed boost at level 4. But that speed boost doesn't really make up for movement with him before you get it, because even doing like hops like I did with Yukimura, Yoshihiro just does not move that fast. The reason I was always so surprised by this is because I've never really liked Yoshihiro's playstyle, and I've always felt like he was one of the weaker members of the cast. But yeah, he's really good in here. And again, you can see that mistake I made by not having the right ultimate on. You also want to make sure you don't do the full forward triangle combo to actually land this. You only want to do the first 2 hits so that you juggle them in the air ahead of time. From what I know about 3 Utage, I think Yoshihiro will also be really good in that game because of his personal accessory in that game, making it so that he one-shots everything. I mean, he kind of turns his gameplay into heaven or hell mode, but since there's a tag system in Utage, the tag partner can just deal with all the abuse. But I haven't gotten his personal style in Utage yet, so I don't know if that heaven or hell effect also applies to the partner. So I won't know for sure until I actually experiment with that, but chances are Yoshihiro is also going to be really good for 3 Utage all stages. So I do use him again for the next chapter. That's mostly because the insta-kill also works on the cannons. I have no idea why my voice keeps cracking. Tonight, like, when I talk to people casually, or when I'm talking to people at work, everything's fine. The second I need to perform, my voice is like, hey, fuck you, maybe? So yes, I can use the insta-kill super ultimate whatever on the cannons, which means that I don't need to worry about whether or not the Sanada cannon overheats. I do mess up some timing here because I've just found the Sanada cannon is the most fickle thing in this game. There's just so many ways you will activate it. You'll see the ring. It'll be like, I'm going to hit this spot. And then it just never actually fires. And while it's pretty annoying in the first section. It is genuinely frustrating against Tadakatsu when that happens. I'm gonna pop telepathy here so that I can just brute force my way through these cogs, just save time, and then I will, again, use Sanada Cannon and the ultimate to destroy these cannons. There's not really much else to say with this chapter. I can't do the forward triangle juggle against Tadakatsu. So what I have to do when I get to that fight is I have to use the Sanada Cannon to stun him in order to land the insta-kill. There's plus sides and downsides to that. A downside is that the Sanada Cannon has a tendency to just move him completely out of the way sometimes. But the plus side is I don't have to pop the extended reach ultimate, so I don't have any reason to be off of the insta-kill. So there's no chance for me to accidentally be on the wrong ultimate. Like with New Game, any percent, just plummet right at this section to skip it. One of the things that I really actually enjoyed about messing around with Platinum is these stages are really fun when you are actively trying to do all coins and like all the minigame trophies in one playthrough. Like for that first set of trophies, so fun. Same with the rainbow missions, like really routing them out. But the rainbow missions, oof, some of them are really stupid, and I'm debating. The more I look into Platinum routing, the more I'll have to know if it's best to do rainbow missions on a first run of stages or on the gold coin second run. So I do want to use the forward triangle against Tadakatsu just to be hitting him so that the Sanada Cannon will actually connect. But as you can see, kind of like not even kind of like Hideyoshi, like Hideyoshi, he is a heavy character, so he can't really be juggled. So the main use of the forward triangle is just to get him staggered so that he doesn't dodge out of the way when I do fire the Sanada Cannon. And that is... Oh, wait, no, I forgot about that. I recorded this a while ago. I need to, like, do a more fresh run of it. But that is Chapter 8. That is the last stage I use Shimazu in. Because he's okay in Chapter 9, but there are just faster ways to deal with some of the enemies in Chapter 9. And then Shimazu is probably the worst character when it comes to dealing with crowds of enemies, so not really going to benefit from having him for the last chapter. So for Chapter 9, I'm going to be using Naotora again, because for some reason, this game codes the robots in this stage as being men. So she deals increased damage to them, which means I just have to hit them like twice, and then they're defeated. I remember like when I found this out, I was just like, what the hell? Because then I was playing Sumeragi a couple days ago, and I was like, oh, this works in Yukimura-den, so clearly it must be the same thing in Sumeragi. And no, in Sumeragi, the machines are not coded as men. So, and like by this point in the new game run, my Yukimura will have the style maxed out, so he should be able to defeat them just as fast if it's just a matter of stats, but it's not. Also right there, I don't usually catch all three cards before Motochika Motonari switch, so I was very much caught off guard by the fact that I did that. But yeah, just like you can see just how quickly she sheds through their health. And yeah, I guess I guess it makes sense because, like, theoretically they have to be coded as something for this skill to work, because in Yukimura-den, these are the only non-human enemies, are the robots here. So that is the first section, though. The only part of this that is normally slow is this upcoming section, because again, Naotora isn't the best at just dealing with large crowds of enemies. And even though 100 enemies is not that big a deal to defeat, for Naotora, as you can see, that's not always the best. Even her tornado attack doesn't really cover as much distance, and it doesn't really draw enemies in the way Mitsunari's attack does. For the bosses of this level, I unfortunately got some pretty abysmal RNG, and with Masamune specifically, he just did not want to get hit by anything. So I deal with Matabe pretty quickly. The issue with these two fights is that there is only 3 telepathy charges, and telepathy gets cancelled between the 2 Masamune fights. So when you go from Masamune to Botenmaru, it cancels your telepathy. When you go from Botenmaru to Masamune, it cancels your telepathy. So ideally, I should have 4 telepathies, but I have 1 from the preceding fight. I grab this one, and then that telepathy box respawns during the Masamune fight. And you would think 1 extra telepathy wouldn't be that big of a deal, but it very much is, because Masamune is, even for the lowest difficulty, is very aggressive. Masamune and Nobuyuki are both just on your ass all the time. So also Masamune is just so good at dodging in this fight. Like, even on New Game when I'm playing as Yukimura, like, he just, whenever I do practice runs, he would just dodge non-stop. So because I think I did this pretty late when I recorded the run, I kind of just wanted to get it done. Because again, this is more of a proof concept first run that will have to be improved upon later. So I just decided not to worry about doing Naotora's ultimate. It is the fastest thing to do. To make this fight the fastest, I would hopefully, against both gauges of Matabe, and against 3 of the Masamune gauges, land the ultimate, and then for the last bar, as usual, use the Basara skill. And that is the end of Naotora in the run. So she did very, very well. I have loved, because usually personal styles have such oddly specific skills, and some of them have the most wild trade-offs. So the fact that this New Game Plus run is just like made on the back of the personal style abilities is really cool. But what is a post-Utage Sengoku Basara game without Kenshin? So I don't use Kenshin's personal style because his is a healing focused one, and I also don't use any of the attack boosts because the Basara attack style doesn't really give you the best boost in just normal attacks. The red attack style, there's not enough enemies that I fight for the attack boost to really kick in. In the green one, you need max health, and Nobuyuki has a tendency to just flick pebbles at you that will deal a pixel of damage that gets you at a full health. So the best style in terms of a safe route is Kenshin's Elemental, because at max boosting level the elemental damage is increased proportionate to what the increase is for the having max health for the green attack and any personal attack style, any personal style that has an attack boosting. That being said, if I wanted to be faster, I would use the green attack style and just pray that Nobuyuki doesn't hit me. In the second form, because every other enemy I can deal with either getting hit because they're just a mook and I can just defeat them pretty easily, or there's like plenty of items around them, like Ieyasu, and plus Ieyasu doesn't really have a wealth of ranged attacks, so he's not really gonna just chip you with something and knock you out of max health. Nobuyuki does do that, so it's very high risk, high reward, because if you use all of the healing fills in the Nobuyuki fight, the run's kind of over because you're just not going to be dealing enough damage to him for it to end fast. So the safer option is elemental. So Mitsunari, his R1 attack, even with max health, doesn't deal as much damage as consistently as Kenshin does, because Nobuyuki is a heavy enemy, and heavy enemies don't get knocked down with Mitsunari's R1 skill, so it doesn't really work. Mitsuhide is another good character for this level. When he's in ecstasy mode, his R1 skill will shred through enemies in health, and you can get some insane... I got the highest combo I have with the character with Mitsuhide messing around with that. The only downside is that it takes him a while to still gain that boosting level, and while you can, preempt Nobuyuki with an R1 attack, it's still pretty easy for him to pop out of it. So the safest option is just this Kenshin ultimate that we all love and know. And so, just like the Sumeragi run, the rest of this run is just going to be Kenshin doing his Kenshin things. So some notes. I think New Game Plus is very fun. I do think it could be optimized a little bit more. Now, I wouldn't mind messing around with some other ideas and characters. But given that you can beat it very quickly, skipping chapter 4 and 6, it's both going to be hard to get improvements and easy to do runs, because I'm not, investing an hour plus just to do one run. My main Yukimura-den focus is going to be maybe either trying out New Game again with some of the things I learned doing New Game Plus, or just starting to work on Platinum, since, it would be the same thing. As I mentioned earlier, I do have some new Sumeragi strats, so I'm also going to start looking back into Sumeragi all stages to try that out. And as I said, I might stream that, because I think it would be fun, and I like playing Sumeragi, and doing it on stream for speedrun is always a good time. So yeah, I don't know if he does it here, but when Nobuyuki has any attack in this form, shards come off of his weapon, and even though you don't stagger from them, they do constitute damage. So this form is the main reason that it's hard to do this without damage. Right there I was lucky, but sometimes Nobuyuki just will not let up. But that is the run. Thank you for watching. As I said earlier, like, comment, and subscribe. Follow me on Twitter if you want. And when I start streaming, I hope to see you on Twitch. And I look forward to doing more speedruns and starting to make scripted videos again. So have a nice whatever it is where you are.